everybody, Suzanne Connersing from Dawning Visions Hypnosis and Reclaim Your Practice in Your Life. I promised you that the next video I was going to cover the Neuro-Linguistic Programming Communication Model as explained by Tad James. So what we need to understand is that we human beings take in a lot of information through our senses. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which is touch, feel, olfactory, smell, and gustatorial, taste. And if we were to actually remember all of these things that we bring into our memory through our senses, we'd be insane. And there are people who actually do have problems because they're unable to delete a lot of the things that are not necessary for them to recall. But in that deletion that we do, we distort a lot of things. And this is why it is that maybe if you did something with your parents or with your siblings or with your friends, and you talk about it a day, a week, month, or even years later, you each have different memories of those particular situations that you had experienced together. It's because you each deleted different aspects of that experience, which is why you cannot rely on your memories, not really, because it creates distortion. Now, to go further into this, we have these things called attitudes, beliefs, and values, which are also unconscious. Now, sometimes these things are consciously unconscious, meaning that you actually know what they are. But if you think about a time when somebody asked you to do something and you didn't feel good about doing it, and the reason you didn't feel good about doing it was because it went against your values, your unconscious values. So we need to remember that these are unconscious. Now, we take all of these interpretations of things that happen unconsciously in our minds, and we create these things called internal representations. So if you take a second now and play with me, you can go ahead and close your eyes. And as you have your eyes closed, I want you to think of a wonderful dessert or meal that a parent made for you, or maybe a grandparent, something you always look forward to eating. And I want you to see the ingredients out there being ready to be made. And maybe you can smell it cooking. It smells so good. It comes out of the oven, off the stove, and you taste it. You can open your eyes. Understand that that thing was not there, that food product. But yet you had these emotions, these thoughts, that were attached to them, and those are called internal representations. And we have internal representations that are not working for us. This is how we end up having thoughts and actions that go against our better well-being. So we take those internal representations and they create our physiology. So, people who are kind of depressed hang down like this. People who are confident sit up like this. And these all create our behaviors. What we do with neuro-linguistic programming is we shift the internal representations to something positive so that we have the thoughts and behaviors that actually help us to help our clients reach their outcomes, the goals of the work that they employed us to help them receive. And there's many different techniques that we can use. I don't know, I learned probably 30 or 40 of them in all the trainings that I've done, maybe more, I don't know, I lost count. But I use the same ones over and over again because they work. And I have a protocol that I use with certain clients with certain situations that have been proven to work over the decade and a half that I have clients that I'm still in contact with who are still doing really well. Not thinking about those things that the conventional mental health and physical health world believe are only manageable, never treatable, and certainly never healable or curable. Now, I'm not a licensed person, don't want to be a licensed person, have no interest in being a licensed person because of the whole reason this YouTube channel exists. Because you're handcuffed with these ridiculous ideas, rules, and conceptions of what helps people heal. Do you want to know what helps people heal more than anything else? And we have the research to prove it. Taking a true interest in the health and well-being of your patients. That's it. That's what matters more than anything else. They found this out through working with cancer patients, that the people who had the best results with overcoming their cancer, not just remission, but really truly letting it go and it never coming back, they had healthcare providers who truly cared about them, listened to them, worked with them according to their patient's value system. I'll also tell you this whole idea of confidentiality. Yes, confidentiality is very, very important in a lot of realms. Certainly you don't want to be telling your client stories and letting people know who these people are unless they've given you the okay to do so. And I have several clients who have written testimonials with their real names on there because they wanted people to know that others could not only have the hope of actually letting go of these problems that every other mental health professional has stated is impossible to get rid of, but they wanted people to know they were real people. And this is the question that I always ask. Who are we really protecting? Is it the professional behind the door with the client because you don't really know what's happening in there with the patient? Or is it the patient? Because I will tell you this. Once a person is the age of maturity, there's something called the freedom of speech. And they have a right to tell their stories. And their stories are our case histories. And our case histories are the things that help others realize what they can accomplish in the work they do with us. Because they did it. Why is it more important to get a referral for a freaking restaurant or a movie or some apparatus that you want for your kitchen or some entertainment system versus someone who's working inside your mind? Why? It is idiotic. And I'm going to tell you right here, there was a person who was on LinkedIn who was brave enough to bring this up when LinkedIn was actually a place where we were talk about best practices and help each other with our individual patients when we were stuck with them. And what he said when it came to this confidentiality, conflict of interest, and all this other shit, he asked this question. This is a licensed social worker with many years in practice. Who are we protecting? Maybe it's ourselves. I'll tell you this. When I was doing my master's in medical sociology, one of the other students had found a research, peer-reviewed research, on the fact that mental health professionals are more important in saving their licenses, and will do anything to do that. I have another story to back that one up. And covering their colleagues' butts versus taking care of their patients. How sad is that? So I had a client many, many moons ago, Donna N. In fact, you can get the book for free on my website of her case history. She needs to update it because we found out that she had some genetic stuff going on both sides of her family that actually made her depression based on genetics, and in her case, dealing with heavy metals in her job, working for a pharmaceutical company when she was working on really radioactive parts of cancer treatments for many, many moons. She was doing that when I was working with her. Anyway, her case history is in that book, and you can download it. It comes in like 10 different sections in the email of her case history. It's called Wake Up Docs, because doctors do need to wake up in terms of looking at the whole person instead of just seeing a mental health, seemingly mental health issue as being mental health, when in fact in her case it's physiological on a few different levels. And it can work the other way around as well. I've had plenty of clients who are referred to me, especially from my friend Midgie, the acupuncturist, who had migraine headaches, and that was all about them not keeping their boundaries, with their parents overrunning their boundaries endlessly in 2 cases, and people with stomach aches and things of this nature with boundaries being overridden as well. So we need to look at things holistically, not in a very tiny viewpoint. So I do feel really blessed that Donna entered my practice because I learned a whole lot. I went to all of her doctor appointments with her, and I learned from the doctors. And it was really insane. One time we took her over to one of the holistic testing places in Cambridge, very well known. The proprietor had died a few years later, or a few years before. It was obvious when I had to drive her home because her sugars went so out of whack because she had told them that she was allergic to certain grains, and they gave her corn syrup to check her sugars. And so she couldn't drive. So luckily I was there to drive her home, and her car had gone with her. And then the very next day was a Saturday. She asked what her test results were, and they said she was never there for testing. Reno Center. Yeah, think twice before you go to them. I don't know if they got their crap together since then. That was a lot of years ago now, but unbelievable. So what you need to understand is that we need to really take control of our lives first as the practitioners in the ways that we need to. We need to understand that we create our practices and our businesses in ways that work for us. We need to understand that a lot of the protocols that we were taught work, that we have seen over the years, do not work based on the lack of results of our clients and patients, and move into a placement where we understand what actually does work. And I can tell you hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, chakra healing, and a few other things that I use on a regular basis, Ho'oponopono, which is nothing about identity, Ho'oponopono, that Joe Vitale teaches, and everything about true Ho'oponopono in terms of letting go of negative emotions from the people who might be infiltrating your energy in a negative way. These are the things that truly, truly work, and they work very quickly and very effectively. There's really no reason for you not to be able to create a practice working with your ideal clients, doing the things that you love to do with people who can afford to pay you based on the results, meaning the objectives they want to meet, which isn't so much about getting rid of their problem. That's 20% of it. The other 80% is their compelling future. What do they want to do with their time? What do they want to do with their energy? What do they want to do with their health that they regained thanks to the work that you did with them? You didn't do it to them, you did it with them. They're 55% of the process. They know inside their unconscious minds what needs to happen, and we just help them facilitate it with the tools and techniques that we have. And because a lot of this stuff is unconscious, as Todd James' communication model explains to you, you can see why it's really important to understand how to work inside the amygdala and the hippocampus of the brain where the emotions live. This is where everything happens. The prefrontal cortex gets in the way. That's why you all were trained. Reasoning, rationalization, judgment. This is why they come to you, the depressed, and say, no, but can't do it. And they make all the excuses because they are not able to bypass that thinking process. And unless you have tools and techniques that do that, guess what? They're not going to get better. And I know you've seen this over and over again in your practices if you're going to be honest with yourselves. They don't need a lot of medication. Personality disorder people are never going to change. We all know this is a fact of life, so get over that. I work with not having them as my clients. And we know people with schizophrenia. I've worked with people with schizophrenia not to let go of their schizophrenia so much as to figure out what helps them to deal better with their schizophrenia. Because they know what they need to do in their unconscious mind to help them to be able to stay lucid and in this life. I've done that for a few people over the years. So, and also with other issues. I had a sex addict come in to see me 2005 or so when I started working with sex addicts. And he was flashing all over the place and doing all kinds of stuff. And he was, I don't know, he was diagnosed as a bipolar, and then he was later diagnosed as schizophrenic. I don't know if he was schizophrenic. I certainly did see the highs and the lows of the bipolar, for sure, over the years that I had worked with him. One, to clear the sex addiction, and years later he came to me to get help with something else. It was actually a project he wanted to do, and he was flying high at that point. But, the bottom line is that, we were working with the issues, not with the actual schizophrenia, although I don't think he actually had it in that case. In any case, I want you to know that you can design a practice around the lifestyle that you want to live wherever the hell you want, as I do, travel wherever you want to, and to have a life that works for you instead of against you, and to create something that works for your patients, your clients, because they get results. Because they don't care about your fancy designations. What they care about is, are you able to actually help them to get their results, which should be the objectives of the work. So my clients, it's things like, I have a client whose objective is really to be able to build his business and to learn the tools and techniques that I know, and I'm mentoring actually, to teach him how to actually with different clients and who to rule out and how, because he doesn't have the background in psychology and psychiatry that I have through all the hands-on work that I did actually in the system before I got out of the system, not liking what I saw happening to both myself and my clients inside this system. All right, everybody, thank you so much for spending your time with me. Till next time. Bye-bye all.